Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be taking a look at the illustrious FCS over FBS upset that we seem to see around 4, maybe 5 times every college football season, normally happening in non-conference play earlier in the year. And I'm just going to kind of react to the more recent ones, the ones that have happened over the past 4 or 5 seasons, beginning with 2 from this past season here in 2023. Well, I guess technically it is 2024 now. How about Sacramento State beginning the season 3-0, beating Stanford? My goodness, Stanford's program, it is sad how they've fallen off. I guess they were kind of relevant in that game against Colorado. That was like a Friday night game. But other than that, Stanford, after they lost Christian McCaffrey, the David Shaw issues, it is very sad. And you lose to Sacramento State, an in-state school. It is very embarrassing. How about Sacramento State's quarterback, 100 rushing yards, 280 passing yards, but they end up winning that game 30-23. Moving on to the next one, this also happened this year. It is Idaho destroying Nevada. Nevada was horrible this season, 33-6 going on the road and winning that game. Nevada, I think, has a transfer running back from Oregon. Is that who? I think Sean Dollars is from Oregon originally, but yeah, they ended up losing 33-6. I remember Idaho when they faced Penn State like 3 years ago and they lost 73-0 or whatever it is. They are not a good team, but there's a nice little FCS over FBS upset. How about this game? 7 overtimes, 59-57. Eastern Kentucky, who honestly probably could compete in the MAC at this point. They just feel like a MAC team to me. They end up beating Bowling Green in an absolute shootout that was completely aided by the college football overtime rules. Crazy score there. Reminds me of that LSU game. What was the final score of that game? Like 74-72 or something. But yeah, Eastern Kentucky. This was from a few years ago. Bowling Green has been a really bad program, but you do have to give them credit this past year. They did go 6-6. They at least made a bowl game. I think it was the Quick Lane Bowl. But either way, moving on to the next one. Jacksonville State beating Florida State week 2. Oh yeah, Florida State was really down bad like 3 or 4 years ago. Mackenzie Milton, the transfer from UCF, a big what-if story for him. His career was destroyed by that injury he suffered at UCF. Then he took a year off, transferred to FSU, and really wasn't the same player. But yeah, I mean, if you're Florida State, you cannot allow that to happen. An in-state FCS school comes into your building and just wins outright when you're probably like 38, 41-point favorites, whatever it ends up being. It is pretty crazy. The win probability, yeah, you can see the original win probability probably started at 99.9, and then it seems like FSU took control after a shaky, late second quarter, and then it just zooms up because Jacksonville State, on the last play of the game, had like some crazy Hail Mary, just fluky play at the end to win that one. The next one, this is another pretty crazy one. It includes Washington, yes, who is in the national championship this year. Dylan Morris, my goodness, this was week 1. Washington initially was ranked 20th a few years ago, facing Montana, West Coast versus West Coast, and there's just no offense in this game. Cade Otton, he's an NFL player. He was like a third-round draft pick. He had 82 receiving yards, but it's just embarrassing if you are Washington, although they've done a really good job utilizing the portal, building up their wide receiver room, and obviously this is an extremely successful season coming off this situation where you lose week 1 to an FCS team. That's the most demoralizing feeling if you are a college football fan. The next one, it is the Citadel beating Georgia Tech and completing one pass while doing it. How crazy is that? Their quarterback, Rainey, 1 of 4, 30 yards. He did throw a touchdown, so his one completion was a touchdown. Georgia Tech in general is one of the more bipolar teams. They always seem to upset teams but then lose to crappy schools like an FCS team in the Citadel. Just an embarrassing loss. At least it did go to overtime. We went to overtime. I had to include this one. Holy Cross upsetting Buffalo. I mean, they were 2-0 at this point. Buffalo was 0-2 on the road. I mean, you take a look at some, what even is this, folks? This is not college football level stuff. I can't believe ESPN even aired this game. Maybe it was on like a ESPN, probably ESPNU or maybe even ESPN3 whatever the streaming is where you can barely even get the games. But Holy Cross wins that one 37-31. Their quarterback had 146 rushing yards on the day. Going back a few more years, we remember when Kansas was terrible at football. Well, how about Nicholls in the first game of the season, upsetting Kansas on the road? Kansas has really come a long way. Kansas in like 2016, they had the track around their field. And now they're on the verge of getting a huge renovation that's going to be happening. You know, I think they won their bowl game, if I remember correctly, this year. They had a very nice season. And, oh yeah, that was the crazy bowl game where they had 230 penalty yards and they still won. Against UNLV, yeah. But how do you lose to Nicholls? Well, it really doesn't surprise me considering how bad Kansas was back 5 or 6 years ago. They did have Khalil Herbert, though, who's an NFL caliber running back in that game. Going back to 2016, North Dakota State upsetting Iowa. First week of this, or no, this was the third game of the season, excuse me. Iowa was ranked 13th. CJ Beathard, who actually started an NFL game recently, against Easton Stick. So this is an NFL level matchup. Easton Stick right now is starting for the Chargers. And how about Carson Wentz? Moving positions, he was a wide receiver. I'm kidding. I mean, there's a lot of NFL players. That's his brother, Connor Wentz, apparently. I had to look that up. I was like, how is Carson Wentz even in this game? But there you can see George Kittle, 5 catches, 110 yards. Yeah, it's just embarrassing if you're Iowa, but also a game that you shouldn't be scheduling. North Dakota State, they were a complete powerhouse, and they're still really good. But now it's like South Dakota State has kind of taken over the mantle as being a powerhouse in the FCS. But that's just a brutal game to schedule if you are Iowa. It's a complete lose-lose facing a really good FCS team, especially the way Iowa plays where they're not going to really outscore you by too much. If you get one unfortunate break, you could lose that game, and that's exactly what happened. They lost on a walk-off field goal at the end. And then the final one, I had to go back to 2013 for this one. Florida losing to Georgia Southern. I mean, this is bad, but Florida was already having a terrible season anyways. They were 4-6 coming into this game. I didn't even know Jerick McKinnon, the NFL running back, what a game for him. 9 carries, 125 yards. How about Georgia Southern completing 0 passes? There's no receiving yards there, you can see, and they still win this game. And this, oh, you remember the old Fox scoreboard? That was before Fox really invested into college football. Because now, I mean, there's like 20 Fox games every week, except for the bowl season. And that's probably going to change, by the way. Apparently, Fox wants some of these playoff games, and they're going to be paying a bunch of money. But either way, this is a terrible loss for Florida, losing to an FCS school. Although, let's be honest, their fans probably didn't even care that much. The team was already 4-6 at that point. But guys, those are just some fun, interesting college football FCS over FBS upsets. I will say, in looking back through the archive, there were a ton of upsets in 2021. And there's actually a website, yes, Fear the FCS, that has all the upsets or all the FCS wins over FBS teams. You can see this little graph right here. It's got a number of lines on it, all the amount of games. That 2020 was definitely because of the pandemic. That's why it went way down. But you can see the running win percentage. It's getting lower as the talent gap is widening. And we're actually seeing FCS teams join FBS. Jacksonville State this upcoming year is going to be another one. The yearly win percentage is normally pretty low outside of a few spikes. This past year it was really low, but either way, just kind of an interesting trend when it comes to FCS upset wins over FBS teams. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.